Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move items 12L up to the next item on the agenda.
Second.
And motion made by Councilor Nelson and a second by Deputy Mayor Sakala. Item L.
We got to vote on the motion.
Where is it? Got it. Okay, we have to vote on the motion. All in favor? Against? Okay, 11 in favor, 10 in favor, 1 against. Be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby approve the proposal to create a temporary residential parking permit program for 120 days on the above referenced streets, effective December 1, 2022, subject to renewal on or before March 31st, 2023.
So moved.
Councilor Mangini.
Second.
And a second, Councilor Nelson. Town Manager, Ms. Zappo, do you have a couple of comments?
So tonight, the resolution is based on feedback that has been received for the parking situation in the residential areas of Francis Street, Highland Park, Pequot Avenue, and Nonotuck Street. There's been significant community conversations regarding this, and there's been some work done by the owner of Jimmy's Pub in order to identify ancillary parking that would conform with our zoning regulations, which would be parking within 500 feet adjacent to his existing location. Those efforts are ongoing and are actually looking very positive. At this point, however, that has not been secured due to insurance issues and other types of arrangements that would need to be made between the two business owners. So what we're doing today is moving forward with starting the process for the request to the Town Council for temporary parking for 120 days for residents only on these streets. At that time, we will be working with the neighbors to identify how to implement that through a sticker system, most likely, with signage, and what would the norms will be for enforcement, mostly complaint-driven, as it is now. At that point, we will continue to assist in any way we can with facilitation of safe and alternate parking for the patrons of Jimmy's Pub. And I emphasize safe because one of the issues that we're having is one of the locations is across the street. There are now some other ideas that have come forward that might be on the same side of the street as Jimmy's Pub, and we want those to come to a natural conclusion in terms of what those viable options are. We also have an ancillary issue that is going to get folded into this, which is related to this issue as we were discussing it, but also related to snow removal in Thompsonville. We're going to be doing a referral tonight to General Government and Finance concerning the fees that are attached to certain parking violations and other types of things, which are not in line with what other communities do, and frankly do not prove probably to be an incentive for enforcement because they're so low. So that will be dovetailed into this as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So tonight, this is strictly for the beginning of a temporary permit process to see how it works. We will be revisiting it, but it will also allow some breathing room for the owner to continue to pursue alternate methods, but also hopefully relieving some of the issues within the neighborhood at the same time. We also are concerned, as at some of the meetings where we've heard that some of the residents are likewise concerned about public safety access, and so this is going to be part of that entire review in terms of parking on both sides of those streets.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the speed at which this has all come together. I appreciate the many people who spoke to me individually about what's been going on in their backyard. I think this kind of resolution is something which balances the business interests with those of homeowners. Now, obviously, I think just about everybody agrees here, we want the business to continue functioning in our town. We also want people to be able to enjoy their house and their children to be safe. That's more important than the business interest for me, but I think this is a good balancing. We're going to have to see how well this works, just like with the prior suggestions and agreements from the last community meeting. But I'm really happy with this, and I look forward to seeing how this turns out. Please keep in touch with the town council as this goes forward, whatever happens with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Finger.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm behind this 100%, but we've had other issues around town that have the same issues. The state park down by Powder Hollow and stuff, and people have come up here many a times and have complained about the parking on the streets down by the park, in the park, and all we did was put up signs saying no parking. I'm okay with it, but if we're going to start handing out permits for special parking, we should start considering that for the homeowners that are living down by that state park. And the other one, because as you know, if you've been here almost a year, I think, we have had a lot of complaints about that down there. Our cops are down there by themselves. It's overtime for them, and, they can't really, it's a hard time for them to control everything. But I think we need not just to focus on Jimmy's Pub. Like I said, I'm 100% behind this, but we need to focus on other areas of town that have the same issues, that people do come to us and maintain that. So it'd be nice if we can also start thinking about that also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, Councilor Nelson?
I just want to thank Ken, because he has stepped up huge, and he hasn't nixed any ideas we've come up with. This is something that's new. We're trying to work through it. The residents are upset. I understand he spent a lot of money in this. He's considered valet parking, which is still on the table. That's huge for a business owner to take on. So I'm just asking everybody to be patient while we work through this. He is on board 100% to make this work. All of our ultimate goal is there will be no resident parking. He finds a permanent solution that will alleviate the problem, and you guys can have your street back. Everything goes to normal, and he can continue to run the business as he's done, and I've tried to explain to him, he's in a good place. He could be sitting there Friday night with his family with no customers and no parking problems. So, it's kind of a self-created good problem for them, but he has stepped up huge. I have had, I don't know how many conversations with the family, and I just want to thank them for working with the town and trying to come up with a solution. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mangini?
Thank you. Through our mayor to our town manager, just for clarification, the resolution reads effective December 1. What steps are we taking in the interim?
So I consulted with the leadership at both the police department and the public works department and our legal staff today in order to make sure that we had a reasonable time period. It is something that is doable in terms of the 2-week window, because we have to do signs. We have to do some level of permit that cannot be duplicated. We have to do an enforcement education out to the officers so that they get a general order about what this looks like. And I do think that we have to do communication out to the residents about what the expectations are and what the permit program looks like. In addition to that, I think it's only appropriate that Jimmy's Pub has the requisite amount of notification time for their customers as well. They've already done a lot of internal marketing in terms of notices with their menus, talking to their staff, monitoring the departure times, but this is going to take it to a new level, because as one of our police staff pointed out to me today, somebody could arrive at Jimmy's Pub at like 8:30, 9 o'clock and leave at 11 and have a ticket. So there is a lot that has to go into really communicating out the most effective way for everyone to navigate that. And I think that it would be fair for both the neighborhood, the town, and the business to work together on that. So that is why I'm suggesting a 2-week rollout. And again, I think it's reasonable to do that with the resources available, as long as the supply chain issues are in place, that we have those materials readily available and can immediately turn around and produce them.
Thank you.
Councilor Ludwig?
Through the mayor and the manager, I think you explained a little bit, but the logistics, how this would work. So a car parks at 11 o'clock on the street. So how's it? So assuming, let's just say the officers are somewhere else, they're not in the neighborhood. Neighbor calls, officer goes over, doesn't have a permit. I'm assuming it's a sticker or something on the vehicle. Issues a ticket. Is that correct?
Kind of. So in the conversations with the neighbors who also were parsing out how this would happen, a lot of what they said is, we know the cars that belong. We know the cars that are visitors. We know the cars that's, Mr. Ludwig's mother-in-law that's visiting. So I believe that in a lot of these cases, it's still going to be a complaint-driven process. I don't foresee that there is going to be an active directed patrol in that neighborhood. But yes, now with the stickers there, we have to be very aware that complaint-driven is my preference, because if you're having a fire in your backyard and you have people that stay past 10 o'clock but don't have permits, they run the risk of getting a ticket, which makes the complaint-driven process a lot more palatable for the neighborhood, because they're not going to call because they know those cars and they know what's happening at Ken's house.
So is there an appeal? So exactly that scenario. Say mother-in-law's over, and for whatever reason didn't call in, didn't let you know. We go ticket the mother-in-law. Is there an appeal process?
There's always
an appeal process.
There's always
here?
an appeal process for any ticket.
And 10 to 6. So this is. I want to make sure I understand the language. Temporary. So what are we permanently looking to do? And I think to Councilor Finger's point, there are other sections of town where, again, we have no parking signs up, and we don't basically enforce the no parking situation. So I guess, is there enough tickets? So if a car parks on the street once a week, 11 o'clock every Friday night, and we're ticketing them, I guess we're just going to keep ticketing them? Is that sort of, or is there do we start, is there a point where we tow? Just curious how this, because again, this logistically, understand why we're doing this tonight. But there are other parts of town where we have no parking signs and we don't tow cars. Mm-hmm. So is this another thing? Is this going to be an ordinance? So that's what I need to understand. So we're doing it a solution here, but is this going to be for all over town? And if it is, it's going to be an ordinance, because we need to be pretty consistent all over town.
So in terms of the consistency, to Councilor Finger's point, there are sections of the Scantic River neighborhood that are residential permit only, and that's a seasonal issue, because in that particular neighborhood, that's their quality of life impact. They don't have a problem right now. They have a problem May through Labor Day.
There's signs right now, if you drove down there, they say no parking.
Right. So, but they also, those streets that are immediately off of South Maple, they have stickers. In terms of what are we looking for long term, I think right now what we're looking for is an ability to alleviate the immediate issue, to allow Jimmy's Pub to continue on their journey to deal with what they have to deal with.
I agree with there. I'm just thinking, what's the long?
In terms of the entire town, I think every neighborhood is different, and so it's an ad hoc addressing of issues as they come. Today, we had one pop up on Manning Road where there is a clear violation of tractor-trailer trucks in violation of their site permit. That's their quality of life issue that we're going to address with a cease and desist order. So I don't have an answer for you in terms of the long haul. This is a temporary fix right now before we move to an ordinance to see if it's effective, because we're not going to legislate ourselves into a situation with something that's not effective.
And that's my point. If this is an ordinance, we need to have a public hearing before we pass this, even if we're trying to do this quickly. I mean, we need to have a public hearing. And the other thing, too, is it going to be police-driven? You said complaint, or will we be having hearing officers do this? Or both?
This has come together very quickly, so I don't really have all the answers, but my initial thought process was we've just received some new hearing officers that I think would be appropriate to take on this as well, including alarms, snow, blight, and the other ones that they do.
And again, I'm all for the temporary, but you can see where this across town, if we're only doing this in certain situations, this becomes completely unfair. And by the way, then we put our police officer in an even tougher position than we already put them in. So I'm just saying, I agree what we're doing here. I appreciate it, but we need to be very cautious what we do all over town, because I can already think of a couple neighborhoods off the top of my head where this is a big issue, where there's a sign, cars are parked there, and we never do a thing about it. And so, again, and I'm not as we get, I don't want to jump issues here. I'm not a big fan of all the fines that we're going to be talking about later as well, because I just don't believe that that's what government should be doing every time. But anyways, I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the responses, Ms. Sapo. Final comment that I would like to make is thank you to the residents, thank you to the owners of Jimmy's Pub for everybody's cooperation in this matter. This is a very difficult matter bringing up, and then it brings up other issues that we have here in town. This is a temporary 120-day fix, so to say, to see how this goes after 120 days. If this works well, then we go to the next process of an ordinance, and then we'll move forward. But let's take the 120-day route, see how everything goes. I think the Bedards have done a great job over at Jimmy's Pub. They've really turned that place around, and then the concerns of the residents are we've taken that very heavily, and we've come up with a solution, and I'm definitely in favor of it. And is there any other comments that anybody would like to make before we? Councilor Santanella.
I just want to say I know that this is difficult for both the neighbors and for the owners of Jimmy's Pub. I have to say my objection to moving this up is there are a lot of people here who I think would have liked to have been heard. I know that there's been a lot of work that has gone into this, and this was agreed on, and I just would have liked to have seen at least a representative from the neighborhood or Jimmy's Pub speak here tonight before we voted, but I don't think that that's possible at this point. So I just wanted to make that note.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody's here.
Excuse me, it's not that we're not having public communications. We're moving this up. There will be public communications. Okay. Roll call, please. Not roll call, a vote.
Mayor Crissati,
4.
Councilor Despard,
4.
Councilor Finger,
4.
Councilor Hopkins,
4.
Councilor Ludwig,
4.
Councilor Mangini,
4.
Councilor Nelson,
4.
Councilor Pisner,
4.
Councilor Santanella,
Against.
Councilor Ungary,
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
10 in favor, 1 against.
Okay.